Welcome to She's Evolving. I'm Elena, a medical endocrinologist, and today we're opening the door to a room that has been kept dark for far too long. We're talking about the transition that every woman will face, yet so few of us are actually prepared for: the menopause. But this isn't a clinical lecture. This is a heart-to-heart about the body after 40, the shifts we feel but can't always name, and the silence that society often imposes on us during this season of life.
And I'm Julia, a clinical psychologist. If you've looked in the mirror lately and felt like a stranger was looking back, or if you found yourself wondering where your spark went, or why you're suddenly feeling emotions that seem completely out of character, this episode is for you. We're here to peel back the layers of taboo and have the honest conversation that our mothers and grandmothers perhaps didn't feel they could have. Before we dive deep into the symptoms, the fears, and the unexpected truths, we'd love for you to join our community. If you find value in our conversation today, please follow the She's Evolving podcast and share this episode with a friend. Let's make sure no woman has to go through this evolution feeling alone.
You know, Julia, as a doctor, I spent years studying the endocrine system. I knew the charts, the hormone levels, the physiology of the perimenopause and menopause transition inside out. But when it started happening to me, all that medical knowledge felt like it was written in a language I no longer understood. I remember being at a medical conference, standing in a room full of colleagues, and suddenly feeling this wave of heat. Not just heat, but a literal fire climbing up my neck. I felt exposed, panicked, and honestly a little betrayed by my own body. It was a wake-up call, a real shock to the system.
It's so powerful to hear you say that, Elena. Even with all your expertise, the lived experience is a completely different beast. For me, it wasn't the heat at first. It was the psychological thinning. I felt like the skin of my soul was becoming translucent. I would find myself crying at a commercial or feeling a level of rage toward a misplaced set of keys that felt completely irrational. Many of the women I see in my practice tell me the same thing. They feel like they are disappearing. They feel invisible to society. And worse, they feel like they are losing their grip on who they used to be. There's a profound sense of grief for the old self that we rarely acknowledge.
Exactly. We talk about the change, but we don't talk about the mourning process that comes with it. From a medical perspective, what's happening is a massive recalibration. After 40, our estrogen levels don't just drop in a neat straight line, they fluctuate wildly. It's like a roller coaster that's losing its rhythm. Estrogen is like a master key. It has receptors in the brain, the heart, the bones, and the skin. When those levels begin to decline, the whole house starts to feel the draft. And that draft manifests in ways that go far beyond the physical. When you mention the brain, it explains so much of the brain fog my patients describe. They feel like they're walking through mental molasses. They forget words, they lose their train of thought, and then the anxiety kicks in. They start thinking, is this early onset dementia? Am I losing my mind? And because we don't talk about it, they carry that fear in silence. That brain fog is one of the most distressing symptoms because it attacks our sense of competence. I've had high-performing executives come into my office in tears because they can't remember a key point in a meeting. Biologically, estrogen helps regulate glucose metabolism in the brain. When it drops, the brain's energy supply can literally dip. It's not a loss of intelligence, it's a physiological shift. And then there's the sleep. Oh, the sleep, or the lack thereof. Sleep is the foundation of emotional regulation. When you aren't sleeping because of night sweats or just a racing mind, your ability to handle stress evaporates. You become reactive. You feel raw. And then we judge ourselves for being moody or difficult. We internalize the crazy menopausal woman trope, which is so incredibly damaging to a woman's self-esteem. It really is. And let's talk about the physical changes that no one warns you about. It's not just the weight gain, though the menopause middle is a real thing because our metabolism shifts and we lose muscle mass more easily. It's the changes in skin elasticity, the thinning hair, and the vaginal dryness. That last one is perhaps the biggest taboo of all. Women are often too embarrassed to even tell their doctors that sex has become painful or that they feel a constant sense of discomfort. And that silence creates such a rift in relationships.
If a woman is experiencing painful intercourse or a total drop in desire, and she doesn't understand why, she might just start avoiding intimacy altogether. Her partner might feel rejected, she feels guilty and broken, and suddenly there's a wall between them. But if we can name it, if we can say, this is a hormonal shift, it's a physical change in the tissue, and there are solutions, the shame starts to dissolve. That's why this conversation is so vital. We need to move from what is wrong with me to what is happening in my body and how can I support it. I often tell my patients that this is the time to become an expert on yourself. We have to look at nutrition differently, focusing on protein to maintain muscle and fiber for gut health. We have to look at movement differently. Weight-bearing exercises are no longer optional, they are essential for our bones.
It's a shift from maintenance to nourishment. And psychologically, it's a shift from living for everyone else to finally checking in with ourselves. For decades, many women have been the givers, taking care of children, aging parents, careers, and households. Menopause often arrives just as the nest is emptying, or as we reach a certain plateau in our careers. It forces a reckoning. It asks us, who are you when you aren't just being productive or fertile?
That's a heavy question, Julia. Who are you when you aren't fertile? In our society, a woman's value has been tied to her youth and her reproductive capacity for centuries. When those things fade, there's a sense of being past your prime. But I like to think of it as entering a second spring. In some cultures, this transition is celebrated as the time when a woman gains her full power. She is no longer bound by the cycles of her body. She is free to use her energy for herself. I love that concept of the second spring. But to get there, we have to wade through the myths. Let's tackle some of those, Elena. One of the biggest questions I get, and I'm sure you do too, is about libido. Is it true that the desire for intimacy just disappears after 50? It's a myth that it must disappear, but it's a fact that it changes. The spontaneous desire we felt in our 20s, that lightning bolt feeling, might happen less frequently. However, responsive desire is very much alive. This means that once we start the process of intimacy, the body and mind respond. But it requires more communication, more lubrication, let's be honest, and more focus on what actually feels good now, rather than what used to work 10 years ago. And it requires self-compassion. If you feel like your body is an enemy, you aren't going to want to be intimate. We have to reclaim our bodies from the medicalized view of menopause and see them as evolving vessels of wisdom. Another myth I hear often is that hormone replacement therapy, HRT, is dangerous and causes cancer. What's the modern medical take on that, Elena? That is a huge topic and one where there has been so much misinformation. The fear largely stems from a study done decades ago that was later found to be flawed in its interpretation for younger, healthy women entering menopause. For many women, HRT can be a lifesaver, not just for hot flashes, but for protecting heart health, bone density, and cognitive function. It's not for everyone, and it's a deeply personal decision to be made with a specialist. But the blanket fear of hormones is something we need to dismantle. We have bio-identical options now that are much more aligned with our natural biology.
It's about having the right tools in your toolkit. Whether it's HRT, herbal supports, lifestyle changes, or therapy, or a combination of all of them. Another myth is that menopause happens all at once. Women wait for their periods to stop before they seek help, not realizing they've been in perimenopause for 7 years already.
Exactly. Perimenopause is the long goodbye. It can start in your late 30s or early 40s. You might still have a regular cycle, but you're suddenly experiencing insomnia, or your anxiety is spiking, or you're gaining weight despite not changing your diet. If you're over 40 and you feel off, don't let anyone tell you it's just stress. It's worth looking at your hormones.
And don't let anyone tell you it's just part of getting old, as if that means you just have to suffer through it. I think there's a silent heroism in how women handle this, but it's a heroism we shouldn't have to perform. We don't have to tough it out.
I agree. The grin and bear it mentality is a relic of the past. We are living longer than any generation of women before us. We might spend a third or even half of our lives in the postmenopausal phase. Why on earth would we want to spend those decades just getting by? We should be thriving.
Thriving requires us to break the silence. I've noticed that when women start talking about their symptoms in a group, the atmosphere in the room changes. There's this collective sigh of relief. Oh, you feel that too? You also forgot your neighbor's name yesterday? You also felt like throwing your blender out the window this morning? That shared recognition is incredibly healing. It moves the problem from inside me to between us. It's a shared human experience. It really is. And it's also about educating the people around us, our partners, our children, our colleagues. If they understand that a hot flash isn't just feeling a bit warm, but is a systemic neurovascular event, they might offer more empathy and less advice. If they know that the irritability is a result of fluctuating GABA levels in the brain, they might not take it so personally. Communication is the bridge, but first, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to look in that mirror and say, okay, I am changing. This is different. And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel a bit lost. We have to give ourselves permission to reinvent who we are. Maybe the old you was a version of yourself that was always putting others first. Maybe the new you is a bit more boundaries focused, a bit more discerning with her time, a bit more unapologetic about her needs. I've seen so many women find a new sense of purpose during this time. They start new businesses, they pick up art, they travel, they finally say no to the things that drain them. Once the hormonal fog settles and we find our new equilibrium, there is a tremendous amount of clarity. It's like the dust settles and you can finally see the landscape. But we have to navigate the transition first, and that's why we're doing this podcast. We want to be the voices in your ear telling you that what you're feeling is real, it's valid, and there is a way through it. As we head toward the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with a thought. Your body is not failing you. It is recalibrating for a new chapter. It's like a software update. Sometimes the system glitches during the installation, but the new version has features the old one didn't. You are becoming more resilient, more wise, and more authentically yourself. And remember, you don't have to carry the weight of these changes in silence. Reach out to a friend. Talk to a professional who understands this transition. Educate yourself so you can advocate for your health. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a very powerful new volume. We hope this conversation has made you feel seen and heard today. If it has, please take a moment to follow She's Evolving. It helps us reach more women who might be sitting in that silence right now. And if there's a woman in your life, a sister, a cousin, a best friend, who you think needs to hear this frank talk, please send this episode to her. Let's start a ripple effect of honesty and support.
Your evolution is beautiful, even in the messy parts, especially in the messy parts.
We're so glad you're here with us. Until next time, take a deep breath, be kind to yourself, and keep evolving.
It's that fear of losing it that does the most damage to a woman's confidence. I remember a client, a high-level executive, who told me she started staying silent in board meetings because she was terrified she would forget a key term or stumble over her words. She felt like her professional identity was crumbling. And that's the taboo part, isn't it? We don't talk about it at work. We don't tell our bosses, hey, I'm going through a massive physiological transition that affects my short-term memory today. Instead, we suffer in a state of high anxiety, which ironically makes the brain fog even worse. Exactly. Stress is the enemy of the menopausal brain. When you add high cortisol, the stress hormone, to low estrogen, you get a perfect storm of forgetfulness and exhaustion. I always tell my patients, give yourself some grace. You wouldn't expect a car to run the same way if you suddenly change the type of fuel it uses without adjusting the engine. We need to adjust the engine. That means better sleep hygiene, looking at nutrition that supports brain health, like omega-3s and antioxidants, and in many cases, discussing hormone replacement therapy if it's right for the individual. But the first step is knowing that you aren't going crazy. You are going through a transition. And that leads us into another area that is often shrouded in shame, the shift in our physical appearance and how we relate to the mirror. We've spent decades understanding our bodies in a certain way. Then, almost overnight, the menopause middle appears. The skin changes texture, the hair thins. For a lot of women, this feels like the end of their attractiveness. Elena, how do you handle the medical side of this without making it feel like we're just fixing a problem?
It's a delicate balance. The shift in fat distribution, where weight moves from the hips and thighs to the abdomen, is purely hormonal. It's the body's way of trying to protect itself as estrogen drops.
But in our culture, it's seen as a failure of willpower. I try to shift the conversation from how do I look thin again to how do I keep my heart and bones healthy? Because that visceral fat around the middle isn't just an aesthetic issue, it's a health signal. We talk about strength training, not to get bulky or skinny, but to keep our metabolism active and our bones dense. It's about empowerment through function. When a woman feels strong, she often starts to care a little less about the specific shape of her waistline.
I love that. Empowerment through function. Psychologically, this is the time for what I call the great reevaluation. For the first half of our lives, many of us used our bodies as tools to please others, to be seen as beautiful, or to perform roles like motherhood or caregiving. Now, the body is demanding that we listen to it. It's saying, I can't keep going at 100 miles per hour on 4 hours of sleep anymore. If we listen, it's actually an invitation to a much deeper level of self-care than we've ever known. It's the moment where no becomes a complete sentence. That no is so powerful, and it brings us to a topic we can't ignore: intimacy and libido. This is the space where the silence is perhaps the loudest. I've had women come into my office, sit down, and start crying because they feel like they've dried up, both physically and emotionally. They feel guilty that they don't want to be touched, or they find sex painful, and they don't know how to tell their partners.
It's a heartbreaking silence, because if you don't talk about it, your partner might think it's about them, that you aren't attracted to them anymore, when really it's a physiological hurdle. The drop in testosterone and estrogen can lower desire and cause vaginal atrophy. But the myth is that sex is just over after 50. That couldn't be further from the truth. It just needs to be redefined. It needs more communication, more lubrication, more time, and often a different kind of focus. It moves from being something driven by spontaneous hunger to something driven by cultivated connection. And medically, there are so many solutions now, from local estrogen creams that don't even enter the bloodstream to different types of therapies. No woman should have to live in physical pain or feel that her sexual life has an expiration date. But again, you have to ask. You have to break the silence with your doctor. And doctors, frankly, need to be better at asking their patients about it too. It's about reclaiming the narrative. We are taught that menopause is a decline, a long, slow fading out. But what if we saw it as a second spring? In some Eastern cultures, this stage of life is seen as a time of great wisdom and power. The mother role is done, and the crone, or wise woman, emerges. She is no longer bound by the cycles of menstruation or the fear of pregnancy. She is, for the first time in her life, truly her own person. I feel that deeply. I'm 52, and despite the hot flashes and the occasional forgotten word, I feel more me than I did at 25. I'm more confident in my expertise, I'm less worried about what strangers think of me, and I'm much more protective of my energy. That's the truth that no one tells you, that on the other side of the symptoms is a version of yourself that is incredibly resilient and clear-eyed. It's a shedding of the shoulds. I should look like this. I should act like that. I should be everything to everyone. Menopause strips that away because you simply don't have the excess energy to maintain the facade anymore. It forces authenticity. And while that can be scary, especially if your relationships were built on you being the one who does everything, it's ultimately the most liberating thing that can happen to a woman. As we start to look toward the end of this conversation, I want to address the women who are right in the thick of it. The ones waking up at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, feeling anxious for no reason, wondering if they'll ever feel normal again. My message to you is, this is a season. It is a transition, not a destination. Your body is doing something monumental. It is shifting into its next phase of longevity. Don't do it alone. Seek out a doctor who listens. Look for a community of women who understand. And don't be afraid to advocate for your own comfort. And my message is, listen to the whispers of your soul during this time. That anxiety you're feeling, sometimes it's just hormones, but sometimes it's your inner self saying, we can't live the old way anymore. Use this time to reinvent your boundaries. Reconnect with what you love, not just what your family needs from you. You aren't disappearing. You are evolving. You are becoming a more concentrated version of yourself. I love that. A more concentrated version of yourself. That's exactly what this is. It's been such a joy sharing this space with you today, Julia. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but I hope that for the women listening, this feels like a hand reached out in the dark.
It really is. If you're listening to this and you felt a spark of recognition, or if a weight felt a little lighter knowing you aren't alone, please reach out. Share this episode with a friend, a sister, or even your partner. The more we talk about these truths, the less power the taboos have over us. We are part of a massive, beautiful movement of women who are refusing to go quietly into the night. We are loud, we are wise, and we are just getting started. Thank you for being with us on She's Evolving. Remember, your health is your greatest asset, and your voice is your greatest power. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, tell you that your best years are behind you. They are happening right now, in every breath and every choice you make to honor your body. Stay curious, stay brave, and keep evolving. We'll see you in the next episode, where we'll continue to dive deep into the stories and the science that make our lives so rich. Until then, take a deep breath, be kind to yourself, and know that you are exactly where you need to be. Goodbye for now, and take care of that beautiful, changing body of yours. It's the only one you've got, and it's doing a spectacular job. See you next time, and remember, the silence ends here.